Fear is normal.
Fear is an appropriate response to a real situation. In her cancer journals, Audre Lorde writes,
If I cannot banish fear completely, I can learn to count it with less. For then, fear becomes not a tyrant against which I waste my energy fighting, but a companion, not particularly desirable, yet one whose knowledge can be useful.
Wherever we turn and whatever we do these days, all are done with the knowledge of living in a pandemic, the constant scrolling to find out news, the constant checking of numbers. The virus is always present. Each coughing signals danger, each sneeze an alert. But that's not the only thing we are trying to grasp, contain, stop.
The virus doesn't act alone. It acts within a global system of fast travel, capitalist exploitation, and intensive animal farming in which it thrives. Just as hard to see but much harder to get, there's the sixth mass extinction still unfolding.
What led us to this pandemic is slowly stopping.
So slowly, for a while.
But within our systems, the things already set in place affect each of us disproportionately.
There is still homelessness, lack of access to clean water, institutionalized racism, sexism and ableism, border policing and ongoing animal exploitation.
Each violence is manifested in the very real-life circumstances of someone. Each fade from view for some becomes present for others. The threat of disease is now here to stay. So we turn to Audre Lorde, from whom we have so much to learn.
I have found that battling despair does not mean closing my eyes to the enormity of the tasks of effecting change, nor ignoring the strength and the barbarity of the forces aligned against us. It means teaching, surviving, and fighting with the most important resource I have, myself, and taking joy in that battle. It means for me recognizing the enemy outside and the enemy within, and knowing that my work is part of a continuum of women's work, of reclaiming this earth and our power, like knowing that this work did not begin with my birth, nor will it end with my death.
Audre Lorde was a black lesbian feminist poet. She was also a writer, an activist, a socialist. She always presented herself with all of her identities without hiding any, knowing that she carries each of them wherever she goes, knowing that each of them have an impact on her and the way in which she is perceived. She spoke and wrote about the need for intersectionality before there was a word for it, stressing how each oppression is linked with another and different from another, how being a black woman is different from being a white woman. But this does not mean they should not work together. On the contrary, they should learn from each other because
the strength of women lies in recognizing differences between us as creative, and in standing to those distortions which we inherited without blame but which are now ours to alter. The angers of women can transform difference through insight into power.
It is from Audre Lorde that we can learn that our silences will not protect us, that we must find ways to connect with each other, not despite our differences, but because of them. That we can learn
which coalitions are possible and which coalitions are not.
That we must look for the things that oppress us, because there is no limited amount of freedom to be divided.
We do not want another victory of the strongest, with only strength redefined.
Sometimes it seems so hard to find our place within this world, to know how to act, what to be in favor of. But Audre writes as if it is simple. Not easy, but simple.
What we must do is commit ourselves to some future that can include each other.
To do that, she says we must look for both difference and sameness, understand both. She was adamant about seeing oppressions not only as exterior circumstances, such as access to housing or jobs, but rooted within ourselves, in our self-destructiveness, in our own undermining of our own efforts.
Such as women talking down on women, mocking femininity, mocking the lack of it, policing our peers.
Fighting each other instead of the system that makes all of us seem less. Audre Lorde wrote that.
Hopefully, we can learn from the 60s that we cannot afford to do our enemies' work by destroying each other.
It is within our communities that we can find and practice care. We can have extended networks that include not just our own families but friends, neighbors, co-workers. We can recognize both sameness and difference, speak out with love, and learn to make space for each other.
Adversity teaches us things. The coronavirus pandemic is showing us that unprecedented social measures can be taken. We can have wages for the sick, for care workers at home, for freelancers. Pricing of utility and rents can be frozen, evictions stopped. We can have healthcare in service of people, regardless of what they pay. We can have open access publications. Air travel can be diminished, and so can more of the things that cause greenhouse gas emissions.
The pandemic also teaches us that we do not live alone, individually, that we cannot, that we are entangled with each other in common environments, that each of us is a host for others, and we are hosted in return. In the very real sense, now we know what it means.
To be a host, to be hosted, to be an environment, to be within an environment, entangled, always, not just now.
The dividing lines aren't to be traced again. When the pandemic is over, we can turn back to a clean slate world, ready to be exploited for profit and submitted to human domination.
One world is gone, another is to be made.
One in which you include each other.
For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. For those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures. Like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hope to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So, it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
Hello, hi there. It's been a tough couple of weeks, and the worst is still yet to come. We are trying to find strength, to see how we are vulnerable, to see where we are privileged, to name the things that set this system up, and it's not coronavirus.
Audre Lorde is such an inspiration for us because she could work through differences. And in times of crisis, when some other is vilified, be it older folk who didn't voluntarily self-isolate, or the diaspora coming back and bringing disease, or racialized folk whose access to water is restricted, it is crucial to recognize the system of oppression that makes us see each other as the enemy.
We wanted to have a video just for Audre and her force and joy of life, but the pandemic is stuck within our heads and we think she too would have addressed it.
So, breathe in. Let's find strength together, care for each other as much as we can, and organize.